Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to Douro Camp 2024 Sustainability Masterclass. My name is Rob Symington and I'm a member of the 5th generation of my family to produce port and wine in the Douro Valley. I know that you have already had a masterclass on Douro viticulture and climate change, which I have seen. Great, because all of the geeky stuff has already been taken care of by my colleagues Fernando and Joanna, who I know wasn't there in person because she just had a baby. So my mission now in the next 30 minutes or so before we have a discussion is to talk to you about how we as a company see sustainability. But I really want to talk to you about the principles behind our approach. All of you are professionals working in the wine trade. I'm sure you have your own experience and opinions about sustainability. So I will offer our perspective, and it'll be really because I was a history graduate, so I think about business. I figured it was a good place to start. A few years climbing the ladder, I made a decision. It was between becoming a winemaker and starting a business. I had to go for the least suitable option, which was to start a business. My business was and now in the UK, the city is the financial district. All the EY, whispering over people, and the conversation we do something else. There were a lot of young 20s and 30s, also more experienced in their careers, trying to find more purposeful, meaningful, but not really aware of where to start. So our business was built on a need to help educated people find interesting, meaningful career opportunities. I had an amazing time in building this global community that help people start businesses and make career changes. There are thousands of people out there in the world who are doing different with their careers, actually do something as our strapline. They're doing something different with their careers as a result of interventions and the help of Escape the City. Thought about business, made tons of mistakes, like business time, and then eventually came here to work with my dad before I took on the incredible privilege and legacy which is estate. And one of the concerns about joining an old wine company, an old family wine company, was would it be like stepping back and working in 1980 again, like where nothing has changed and it's all very old school and traditional. So before I came out, and coming from startup land in London to the port trade and Porto and like working with these old dudes who used to be, when I was a kid, they were muscles at family gatherings. Came out and I met with a bunch of our leaders. And it's true, a lot of what we do today is still very traditional. And in fact, my grandfather would still recognize a lot of practices, so as it should be. What really by a bunch of people who I felt really eyes open to the big of our time, of our generation. Mainly climate change, but also other challenges, social and environmental. And I thought, traditional, yes, we're old, but we are also committed to and innovation, and we're committed to. And I also realized that you don't exist and survive for 142 years without basically reinventing yourself every decade, or at least every 20 years, certainly every generation. So I was like, wow, this is an interesting challenge, because the challenge of our generation isn't just going to sell some more bottles of wine. It's going to be to transform an organization in our own way. And obviously, we're not going to be able to solve all of the macro challenges that humankind face, but in our own way, within our own sphere of influence, to try and make some really positive stuff happen. It was probably for me that made me decide to come back here and join my family business in 2017. So I've been here for 7 years now. And it's exciting to see the things that we, not just the younger generation, but the older ones as well, with their openness to change, have managed to achieve over that time. Over to you. What do you think sustainability means for a wine producer? How do you define it? What are the key words?
Securing continuation of the business.
Continuity, yeah, thank you.
Green energy.
Green energy.
People they care about not only stuff, but people.
People, the social element, exactly.
Social life.
To reuse your resources, like if you have the Douro or whatever, use the water that you get.
Yeah, use your resources responsibly and as efficiently as possible. Anything else?
Just think about the future in a negative and in a positive way.
to think about the future in a negative and a positive way. So to anticipate the risks and respond to them. Yeah, exactly. You guys are talking on all the right areas. And when I came back, Symington was doing lots of stuff which you would call was within the sustainability umbrella, but it was probably a little bit piecemeal, a little bit siloed. There wasn't an integrated strategy, and some of it was maybe a little bit old-fashioned, a little bit 20th century. So if I talk about what I think sustainability meant, not even that long ago, but let's call it the 20th century mindset, it's a little bit more of a cynical view, because it was seen as a nice to have, marketing and PR, let's just tell some good stories. Let's avoid being criticized, because that's a strong instinct for a wine producer. We don't want to be criticized. We don't want to stick our neck out. Let's just play it safe. Elements of greenwashing, we just want to look good. Ad hoc initiatives, like let's do this one thing here, let's make a donation there, let's do some green stuff in the vineyard there, but nothing pulling the whole thing together. Also, at that time, the consumer and the trade didn't really care. People associate wine as a natural product. And so this idea that a wine producer had to be responsible, ethical, look after people, look after the land, it was kind of assumed that that was happening anyway. When I say this, I'm generalizing, and I'm talking about maybe 20 years ago. But also a lot of DIY, like, well, we just do our own thing. We don't really have to sign up to any certifications or frameworks, apart from the legal, the basic ones that the retailers or the importers will require from us. And then the finance mindset is like, all this green crap costs money, so why are you spending money on it? So that's kind of the old school approach. And I call it 20th century, but there are still a lot of people who I meet today who still kind of have this mindset. With all humility and a lot of work of research and understanding best practice, not just from the wine trade, but from outside of the wine trade, this is where we've ended up as a company. This is what we believe 21st century sustainability thinking consists of. So the first is risk management. To your point at the back there, bad stuff is coming our way, or let's not call it bad stuff, challenging stuff. Now, you would be totally irresponsible to be the leader of any company, a family business that is thinking in terms of generations, and let alone a wine producer that relies on the environment for its product, if you're not thinking about the risks that you face. And then linked to the risks is future-proofing. How can we take actions and make investments and do research and development today so that in 2030 and 2040 and 2050, we stand the best chance of having a healthy company? Therefore, innovation. What are the things that we don't do today that tomorrow will become more part of our business as usual? Transparency. This is another thing that wine companies hate. They're like, why would you share information if you're not legally obliged to do so? But if you look throughout the economy at brands that people trust and at leaders who are doing really good things in their sectors, they're sharing way more information than they are legally obliged to do so. Because part of leadership on sustainability is being like, yeah, we have an impact. This is the bad, this is the good. We have goals, and we're trying to clean up our act. Regeneration. So some people are very cynical about the words sustainability. They're like, sustain what? The current system is very damaging and destructive. We shouldn't be trying to sustain, we should be trying to regenerate. It's a harder challenge, but it's actually a more exciting one, trying to improve things from their current state. Consumers. So consumers today do care more than they did in the past. They want to know that they're buying from ethical, responsible companies. Now, this varies by market. I can tell you, like, in Portugal, interest in sustainability is dramatically different. But as a brand who wants to be strong in sustainability, we obviously have to ask ourselves, how can we communicate this clearly? How can we communicate in such a way that you don't have to have a PhD in environmental management to understand that you're buying from a good, in inverted commas, company? Credibility. People are very skeptical. Why? Because of greenwashing. Because people make claims that actually when you lift up the bonnet and look at the engine, you realize that it's all not really true. And community. What I love about sustainability, and I see this in Portugal, I see this internationally in the wine trade, it's one of the areas that we really don't compete. We find a willingness to help each other across wine companies that I find very motivating. Transversal. So this is within Symington. We're trying to make sustainability every department's responsibility, not just like one or two people in the corporate social responsibility team. And that, in my opinion, is the best way to try and enact change. And then preparing. So soon, a lot of what is kind of seen as innovative or forward-thinking will become mandatory. I'll give you one example. You guys might know this. In the EU, as of 2026, it will be mandatory for every company above a certain size to publish a sustainability report. So this is our first one. Very proud of it. A lot of work went into it. But actually, in 2 years' time, every company that has more than, I don't know what, maybe 40 million of sales and more than 300 people will have to do this legally. So and this is red tape, this is compliance, this is regulation. But the bottom line is if you're not ready for it, it's going to be harder for you to adapt. So these are some of the things that we've tried to build our sustainability strategy around over the last few years. Disclaimer, we are not perfect, and we are not there. A lot of this stuff is hard, and we are a work in progress. And anyone who tells you, oh yeah, we've got sustainability 100% tapped up, they're either in denial, lying, or they don't understand what sustainability really means. Because sustainability really means telling the truth about your negative impact, what you're trying to do to improve, and the things that you're doing that is good. It's not just about talking about your nice PR initiatives. So I think this is probably very basic, but it's worth saying. In the economy, people talk about 3 pillars of sustainability: people, planet, and profit. If you don't have a profitable business, how can you invest in planet and people? But you need all 3. If you're doing this right, you need a strategy for all 3. So just a basic kind of intro slide. When I have days when I look at, and I don't know if you guys ever had these days when you look at like the challenges of the 21st century that are going to affect us all and are way bigger than any individual, any company, any country, and you feel a little bit intimidated or overwhelmed. Bloody hell. Because we were all quite lucky to be born when we were. We've lived through a period of relative peace, relative prosperity, but then you look down the line and you're like, I wonder what 2050 is going to be like. And then you look at the systems that would need to change to address or fix some of the problems that we all face, whether it's the fossil fuel economy or high levels of consumption, but with a very linear value chain, which has, raw materials, consumer goods, waste and spoilage, and not much of it is circular. And you think, this is impossible. We're in a mess and no one's going to get out of it. And the way I get out of this in my own head is I remind myself that the change starts with people and what they value. It starts with culture change. Culture is, what do we collectively value? What do we think is important? And then systems are, how do we organize ourselves? How do we organize? How do we get food on people's tables? How do we travel around the world? How do we heat our homes? And the thing is, I think we've lived through one of the most rapid culture changes in the history of humankind. If you think about what we were all taught at school in the 80s, 90s, and noughties, depending on your age, and what kids are learning in school today, it's dramatically different to what our parents and our grandparents' generation were being taught, and therefore what they value and what we value. And I'm not saying that caring about the future is only a young person's concern, but just by law of how life works, we've got more invested in the future than older people do. But this is where it happens. This is where it will start, is with culture change. And culture change requires people using whatever platform and whatever voice they have to talk about what matters to them. That's why I stand up and talk about things that some of my cousins will be like, Rob, can you just talk about the wine, how good the wine is? And I'm like, yes, and we need to talk about this stuff. Because it's the right thing to do, because our consumers care about it. And so if we had a few more generations to solve this problem, I'm sure we would solve it. The problem is we don't have very long. We've got like 1 generation or half a generation. And it's not a black and white question of, are we going to avoid climate change or not? It's coming. The question is, how bad is it going to be? And everything that we do in our lives and in our companies today will determine how bad or less bad it is. So that's what kind of gets me out of bed in the morning. So culture's changed, and as a result, our expectations of companies have changed. In the 20th century, a company was expected to make profit for its shareholders and produce an amazing product or service, because that's how you get people coming back and reusing you. Today, expectations of companies are way higher. It's about responsibility. It's about ethics. It's not just about please don't break the law. It's about please don't break the law, and please can you show me that you are best in class, that your brand is leading on stuff that I care about. And I don't just care about quality. I care about how you treat people. I care about your impact on your suppliers, on your customers. So this is wild, because it means that a business leader, or anyone who works in a business, has got a lot more on their plate and has to learn a whole load of new stuff that in the past they were just concerned about quality and profit and managing an organization. This guy who I know, Ben Keane, if you're not building a mission-driven, problem-solving business or evolving into one, then you will be left behind. So the statement here is about, you've heard people talk about the purpose economy. businesses that survive and thrive in the 21st century will be ones that are built around purpose. And sometimes that can sound a bit abstract, but you can be a purpose-led company in any sector. You can be a purpose-led law firm, you can be a purpose-led software tech company, you can be a purpose-led restaurant, and you can certainly be a purpose-led wine producer. And I'll talk to you a bit more about our purpose shortly. Anyone know what this is? Someone on YouTube? Anyone see these stripes before? Can you have a guess what this is? Yeah. Yeah. Temperatures, exactly. This is scary. So this is using 61 to 2010 as the average. This is the divergence from the average. And you can see which direction it's headed. Obviously, this is global, and you get regional variations. But as Fernando would have shown you up in the Douro is roughly experiencing more or less this. And the challenges we face, how could we be any different to the global challenges? So best practice sustainability strategies start with your biggest risks. Why would you go and solve a problem? I don't know, child labor. Thankfully, it's not a problem for us in the Douro. So why would we build our sustainability strategy around that? We wouldn't. We're building our sustainability strategy around the risks that are most material for us, material being the word that the sustainability geeks mean for most relevant, your biggest risks. World Economic Forum publishes a very depressing read every year. It's called the Global Risks Report. Can anyone guess over a 10-year time frame, because this is voted on by politicians and business leaders around the world, what were the top 3 risks over the next 10 years in the report for this year? Just shout out some risks. Water? Drought.
So food supply, maybe.
Food. Climate. And then they color code them. And so I'll flick them up now. The reason I've got this coming in with a really cheesy animation is because these are heavy risks, so you'll see how it bounces. Boop. So the top 4 over the 10-year time frame are all green, i.e. environmental or ecosystem related. Extreme weather events, critical change to Earth systems, biodiversity loss, natural resource shortages. They're all linked to the fact that we have a system, a human civilization, which is incredible reflection of human ingenuity. Incredible what we've achieved. Think about what's been achieved in the last 100 years. But there's one flaw. The flaw is that our system is destroying the living systems on which it relies on for its existence. Which if you think about, don't think about it too much because you get very depressed, but it is a problem. Luckily, globally, everyone's aware of this. Unluckily, it's very hard to change a system as complex as the modern human civilization. We apply this framework to our reality, and we try to understand material or relevant to Symington Family Estates, because most of you in the wine trade, and you can imagine the main threats to producer: climate change, water scarcity, it's biodiversity loss, it's erosion, and it's soil or soil health. On people in the Douro, some things are specific. Some things are just specific. Competition, health and safety, ethics and diversity, equity and inclusion, things for any 21st century to ensure that they're leading on. But also specifically in the Douro population, we have what work. Every year it's hard to find people to work in the wineries. Actually, a hotel up in the Douro is a big issue. The economic viability of we buy from about 800 growers. Some of these growers are parents. So we're embedded in the fabric of the. If these growers don't have a future, nor do we. So you can see how you do the right thing. This is enlightenment. We're trying to make a collective viable. And then obviously you've got inflation. You lose categories which have aspects as well as anyone in wine spirits. We have to respond to changing consumer trends and changing market trends. So these are a company like this. So the principles of our sustainability strategy are to be holistic, not like organic or education. It's just how we're farming. Business strategy, not just 3 people out of 100. Just use frameworks because people who know more about this very uncomfortable. Said to me, but emission reduction. The answer is, that's what leadership looks like. The right thing to do. Business is not related to or that's what responsibility looks like. So we're going to do this. This is perhaps, which I'll talk about shortly. Continue to improve that built frame. So every you're to increase. We like that because time when you get done and then you just it's a to transition. You know, when you can solve problems, kind of trend we're trying to do in terms of generations. Keep making a mix that presents our that authentic line people love, but we want to do this in a way that contributes to the future for the places where we work. In another way, it's using this phrase, force for good. And we do that. That's the challenge we've set. Why did we B Corporation? B Corporation is a company that its articles of statute has put considerations we're just a certification. It's saying we are actually reinventing what a company is in the 21st century. And the reason why we liked it is it's very holistic. It's end-to-end. It's not just about farming. It's about governance, ethics, supply chain, water, environment, customer, community. Fast Company said B Corp is one of the most important economic open-minded thinking, but I don't think this company is ever going to go for B Corp. And at the end of it, Rupert Symington, my cousin, who's our CEO, who I would not have predicted reacted like this, came up to me and said, Rob, I love this. B Corp is exactly what we need to be doing. And 1 year later, we were doing the framework, we were in the process. So for me, that was a lesson of never assume what people are and aren't prepared to go for. And this, becoming a B Corp, has really changed our identity, not just in the market, because a lot of people don't know B Corp. Retailers, monopoly markets, importers, distributors, they appreciate and value it, consumers in some markets. But Symington's own identity as an organization, you'll hear people every day in this company saying, well, as a B Corp, I think we should take this decision. So it's changing the way in which we see ourselves for the better. I'm almost there, but our sustainability strategy falls into 3 pillars, and these won't be a surprise to you given what I've explained so far. The first is we've got to respond to our shared challenges. This is about risk management. This is about climate. This is about reducing emissions. This is about adapting in the vineyard. So think about all that research that Fernando Alves and Joanna are doing. They're trying to figure out how we can be viable in 2030, 2040 in the vineyard. Which varietals? What role will irrigation have? Canopy management, basic stuff, vineyard robots, satellite monitoring systems. How can we, because we can't just like up and move to another region. I mean, we're one of the oldest DOCs in the world. We want to carry on where we are. So we are going to have to adapt. And so a lot of our sustainability strategy and the investment goes into how are we going to be able to withstand the changes that we already know that are coming. And also the wider ecosystem. Today, people have an awareness that great wines don't just come from a scorched earth vineyard where there's nothing living anywhere around it. Great wines come from a vineyard that is integrated in an ecosystem that is healthy. And it's taken a long time, again, to change cultural mindsets on this. But for us, that's evolved and involving a lot of work to look at functional biodiversity, soil health, working with rewilding Portugal on certain aspects outside our vineyards, because we're aware that if the Douro is a healthy region environmentally, it will help us produce better wine. The second one is about innovation, but practicing sustainable innovation. So this is everything from the wineries to energy usage, to water usage, to bottle weight, to bottling, packaging, the whole value chain from the wine to the bottle in your restaurants or on the shelf. And the third one is obviously fundamentally important. Without people, we don't have a business. So this is about the 600 people who work for Symington, as well as the communities who we rely on for our suppliers, be they grapes or other suppliers in the region. And we built everything we do around these three pillars, based on an understanding that the most material risks will be addressed by us doing this stuff well. So some examples of us walking the talk, not just talking, because there are a lot of examples in the wine trade of people doing a great job of talking, but then when you lift the lid, you're like, there's nothing happening here. And I was really keen for us not to do that. In our report, we talk about the negative impact we have, and the reason why we've signed up to these third-party frameworks is so that someone else is holding our feet to the fire. It's not just claims. Now, it's easy to be critical of the wine trade, and you can be critical of any sector. The reality is the wine trade is overwhelmingly made up of small and medium-sized companies. So you go to someone who started a winery, and they employ 24 people, and they're like, wait, and now I need to find another 3 people to do all of this stuff as well? The reality is this stuff takes time and costs money, and it's not straightforward. So I understand, and even for us, we're a medium-sized company on a European scale, but in the wine trade and in Portugal, we're probably towards the bigger end. It's hard for us. So how hard is it going to be for a smaller operator? So one has to be realistic about this. Here are some of the things we're doing. So we became a B Corp, the first B Corp winery in Portugal. At the time, there were only about 30 B Corp wineries in the planet. Most of them were in the States. Now there are over 500. So it's really great to see our sector adopting B Corp as a way of communicating with consumers in a very simple way, a stamp of credibility and reliability on responsible business practices. We're members of International Wineries for Climate Action, which was founded by Jackson and Torres as essentially the wine trade setting the standard for reducing carbon footprints, and we were founding members of that. We were the first company in Portugal, winery in Portugal, to get certified for the Sustainable Wine Growing Portugal framework, which was actually only created because we asked for it. Because we went to Finland, and the Finnish alcohol monopoly were like, you guys need a national framework, and you don't have one. And Portuguese wines are losing out compared to the New Zealand wines, which do, because you're missing points on the green tender criteria. Amazingly, because in Portugal, bureaucratically in the wine trade, we have 11 or 12 wine regions, each with their own association. Then they all send delegates to the national one. And you can imagine what it's like trying to get agreement there. Amazingly, when Symington asked for a national certification, they were like, yeah, we'll do it. And within 1 year, it existed. And that was, for me, that was a really great example of seeing positive change in Portugal in the wine trade and sustainability. We had this thing called Mission 2025, where we set a whole load of goals. We put them on our website without knowing whether we would achieve them. And next year, we'll publish whether or not we have. I can give you the teaser, probably 8.5 out of 10 will have got there. The one where we haven't made it is carbon emissions, because we set ourselves science-based targets that basically, unless the economy transforms, we're not going to reduce our emissions fast enough, because 95% of our emissions are in that supply chain, not under our direct control. And a bunch of other stuff, research in the vineyard. There's Fernando, our grape variety libraries, Impact Fund, partnership with Rewilding Portugal, donating ambulances to the volunteer fire brigades in the communities in the Douro, open letters in Portugal's leading newspaper about reform of the outdated regulatory system in the Douro, the LEED certification of our new winery. So there's a bunch of stuff here that we've chosen harder routes because we want to do this right. So just to summarize, and I'm super interested to hear your perspective, because this is mine, and it's not the truth, it's just what we're trying to do. The challenge is systems change requires culture change. So you've got to start with the people. The pressures of business as usual. So what I mean by this is, I always use Carlos, who's our CFO, our financial director. He doesn't know I use him because this isn't fair, but Carlos would be saying, Rob, all this sustainability stuff costs money. And I'm like, and we need to sell. And, margins are under pressure, blah, blah, blah. And he's right. But at the same time, there is a business case for sustainability. So a classic one would be electric cars or solar panels. The payback is actually pretty decent. Another one would be lighter glass bottles. And not only in the cost per bottle, but also the transportation. So sustainability stuff doesn't always have to cost money. And in fact, the best innovations in the long run, or even in the medium term, save you money. But the pressures of staying competitive in the market can mean that sustainability is always seen as a nice to have, like a luxury. But if you go back to my opening point as seeing this as risk management and ensuring that the business is future-proof, then you change your frame of how you see sustainability. The issues we face are way bigger than Symington Family Estates or any one company. But we still need to take responsibility for our impact. We can't do that whole, like, well, shrug your shoulders, it's not my problem, it's nobody's problem, because then no one will do anything. And the role of 21st century businesses as activists for change. We have a small platform. People listen to us within the wine trade, not everyone, but we believe that we have a responsibility to talk about what we're doing and the wider change that we would like to see happen. But we can only talk about what we're doing if we're credible. And we will only be credible if we're actually doing stuff. So it's circular. Why do we do this? We have a long-term mindset. We're a family business. We make ports and wines that we want people to be drinking. I mean, I drank a 1945 the other day made by my grandfather and great-grandfather. Like, port is a timeless wine. No wine ages like port wine, like vintage port does. So we have long-term thinking in our DNA. To produce our product, like any winery around the world, we need a stable climate and a healthy ecosystem. And we need the communities where we work to have a positive future. And bottom line, it's the right thing to do. So I don't want to get all emotional with you guys, but so I'm a dad. Many of you are probably parents. My kids were born over the last few years. Oh, did I click something? So my kids were born in 16, 17, and 23. So 16 and 17 was the first time we ever did a back-to-back vintage port declaration. And various of my friends were like, is there a conspiracy here? Do you decide vintage port declarations when your children are born, Rob? And then unfortunately, 23 was a really bad year, and number 3 is not going to have vintage port from his birth year. But there were some decent Quinta ports made that year. So these guys are going to be alive at the end of this century, I hope. I'm going to be working, I hope many of you guys will as well, in 2050, right? To be honest, the retirement age in Portugal is just getting further and further out. We'll probably be working till we're 80 or until we die to pay for the old people. And the question I ask myself is, what kind of world will we be leaving them? And what can we do within our own modest, humble sphere of influence to try and make sure that that future is as positive as possible? So thank you for listening to me. We will turn off the video shortly, and I would welcome your questions.